somebody who did so much for Kenya ran into this difficulty. Uh, People like me who took pride in the fact that we had a Makhan Singh who stands tall as a point of reference for many of us, moved on. We joined the government, we did things, you know, in trade, in politics, etc. Makhan Singh just did not budge. What was that? And finally, you know, I say this with total sadness. When Makhan Singh came back from detention, Kenyatta, Tom Mboya, and I think Odinga, I may be wrong, went to greet him, went to his humble house. When Makhan Singh died, and I was at his funeral, there was nobody from the government to say anything. The only black face we saw there, I say that with a lot of deference, I have to say it because it depicts the feelings, was Fred Kubai. And the only other person who paid any homage was his own friend, his classmate, Justice Madan. Now, you know, what is this African context of society? What did it want to secure from Makhan Singh? Now, that book to which I pay such homage does us proud, us Asians. And it's a part of Makhan Singh's enigma that we live with. How many Africans have read it? Much of what is there was known to us, but it was nice to see it within two folders and to read it systematically from page 1 to page, whatever, 600. But how many, really, the success of that book would be, and I told Zarina Patel this, how many Africans have read it? How would they know who was Makhan Singh? And unless they read that book, how would they know whatever we did for Kenya? And finally, it's I do not want to say that I do not want to be disparaging in any way. I do know that there is a thought process underway where academic circles, in academic circles, there are African intellectuals who are beginning to look at this issue. And they are beginning to investigate what was trade unionism, what did Makhan Singh contribute to it. Was he a trade unionist or was he a nationalist? Was his struggle for trade unionism and communism, or was it against imperialism? And I hope one day we will see the end product of those intellectual endeavors of our African brothers put on stage for us to interact with them. That would be the final, in my mind, point where we would see how we rate ourselves in context of Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would like to answer this.
Of course, please do.
Thank you. As you probably know, I'm his grandson, his eldest grandson. First of all, to answer your question, I think my grandfather did what he did in life. It is something inborn in him. It is not, I don't think he was influenced by any religious background, although Sikh history has this thing about martyrdoms and people who struggled. However, I think it was something inborn in him. it was not passed down by his father or grandfather. He was somebody who supported anybody who struggled in life or anybody who was exploited in life. And maybe he felt it was his duty to support those people in the way he could do. He obviously couldn't do it financially or materially, but the only way he could do it is obviously uh, the way he did. Um, through the freedom movement and all that, and he went to, he was detained for so many years. That was his way of fighting for the exploited class. There's something interesting. He was born in 1913 and released from Lokitank in 61. He would have been 47, 48 at the time. I'm that age roughly at this time. This is quite interesting. And I was just thinking about it, that at that age, his career was virtually over. Whatever he had achieved in life, he had achieved it by the age of 47. And really, what he did after independence was of not much material. Basically, he was just cast aside by the government. And I'm trying to answer his question. The reason is my grandfather was too honest. He wouldn't change his values. Nothing would make him change his values. That's the difference between him and the other people. I don't want to name people, but people who ruled Kenya. Once Kenya got independence, they got greedy, and they decided to make money. And past was past for them. So people like Kenyatta became billionaires or multimillionaires, and everybody else became wealthy because they were not communists, and they believed in making money. And my grandfather was far too honest to have done that, and that's the reason they could never give him a job or anything. First of all, he had categorically said he was a communist and he wouldn't change his ways. So that was a non-starter, because as far as post-independence Kenya was concerned, there was no room for communists or people who held those views. My grandfather never changed his views, unfortunately for him. Had he done so, well, that would have been completely unlike him anyway. I'm sure he would have attained status in Kenya post-independence in terms of maybe being a junior minister or something. I doubt it, but it's possible. But that wasn't him. He just wasn't corrupt. And that's what I believe. I hope I've sort of answered him to some extent. His message was basically, I think he was born at the right time. He was born at the right time in history for what he did. Had he born 50 years later, I really don't know what he would have done. He wouldn't have. I'm an accountant. I don't think he would ever become an accountant because, you're obviously dealing with money. So I think he was born at the right time in history to do what he achieved in his life. Had he been born 40 years earlier or 40 years later, I don't think he would have. I really don't know whether he would have achieved anything in life, because of his inborn nature. I don't think he could have held any proper job. I don't think he ever held a proper job in his life, because if he's, from the age of 13 or 14 to when he was released at the age of 47, he was just part of the freedom movement either in Kenya or India. So he never held a proper job. What is very, very pleasing to me, and I'm very proud, is that his children hold him in very high regard, despite that. My aunt here, sitting here, they only saw him every now and then during school, probably I think during school holidays. They went to Maralal, which is about, I think, 7 or 8 hours journey from Nairobi. But they looked forward to that. And today they hold him in very high regard. And I'm very privileged, obviously, with all that. And um, it's only in the last few years there's been an interest in his life all over again since Zarina wrote this book, Unquiet. So he died in 73, so it's about like 35 years after his death, people just all of a sudden started having an interest in his life. I think that's quite amazing. What happened during those 35 years? And the answer is nothing. Nobody thought of writing a book. So credit has to go to Zarina for, resurrecting his life, his career, what he did in his life, and people have an interest in him today. I think he'll be remembered for another 35 years from today as well. Obviously, there'll be different people in a different room, different generation. Probably my children or somebody else, because what he did, for what he stood for in his life. I think people like him are just born very rarely in the world. It's somebody born like that today probably won't have a job, because they stand for the oppressed people of the world. People are exploited, and somebody will just tell them, well, nobody's exploited because there's a human rights law and the law supports people. There's a minimum wage. So he was probably fortunate having been born at that stage in history. We wouldn't be here otherwise. We wouldn't be talking about him. And I think I'm very proud for what he did. I personally wouldn't have done what he did because everybody's different. But he obviously sacrificed his life for his principles, for his ideals. Very, very few people would do that at any stage in history. I don't think we'll see his like again for a very long time.
Thank you. This one there.
Yeah, thank you very much. With what happened after the independence was won, I wanted to find out if he is the only one who actually in his group worked. Definitely a person of this caliber will have worked with others. And is he the only person who, was there another person who was with the same type of background, who was brought into the government of the government, the Kenyatta government, for us to be able to say, okay, probably it was not racially inclined, but probably the government felt he is not the best person to co-opt into the government. That's one side of the question. I don't know whether my question is clear. We are looking at the future. The past, what happened then is, we say it's history. History is still being made. I want to know how racism at that time, for a great man like this who had played a very important role, was isolated. And was it for him specifically, or there was another person who was co-opted into the party, to the government, rather than probably him, maybe because certain conditions were not met? The second part is, today, a lot of our youth easily make that comment. Politics is lies. Politicians are liars. This is a great politician. he lived a selfless life. Now, what could have gone wrong? That the politician yesterday, selfless service, lived for dignity and good name afterwards. Today, we have politicians who are, I would say, extremely questionable, mostly for financial reasons. What could have gone wrong is our new world order that is polluting people to come out and serve humanity. I mean, improve on life of people, fight for others, like Singh did. I won't say your father because it's our father. Every good person is the father of everybody. So, is it what is going wrong today that we can't be able to get up and look at what is going wrong, that we can be able to make it better, to create a better future than all of us being trapped in this quagmire? Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one comment I'll make on your, just a few words. First of all, I would say my father was not a politician of the old order or the new order politician. Because he was, as my nephew said, and other people around have said, he couldn't lie, right? He couldn't make up things. He was truthful. He was just too true. It was, you could almost say, he did not fit into that society. When he was released and the new government was formed in Kenya, he just did not fit into that way of thinking of people, the politicians. And earlier on, maybe he didn't realize, but my older brother says that it seems that he did begin to realize that he just did not fit into their way of thinking, the new government's way of thinking. So in the new government's way of thinking, he did not fit there, and he himself realized